Hello there, and welcome to the show, and today I'm going to be talking about AEW Full Gear. Full Gear took place on November 22nd, live from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. This is the third time that Full Gear took place from this arena, first one being in 2022, second one being from 2024. The show had an attendance of over 10,000 people. Let's talk about it. For the second show in a row, for whatever reason, AEW decided to open with a match from 0 Hour bleeding into the main show. This time it was a trios match for the CMLL Trios Championships with El Sky Team versus the Don Callis family. I am not going to go over this match, although I will say this match did further the storyline between Okada and Takeshita, leading to Takeshita eventually being kicked out of the Don Callis family. El Sky Team win, they retain the CMLL Trios Championships. And at the very end of the match, Tony Schiavone said this line on commentary: "This is why you gotta watch 0 Hour." No, I don't, Mr. Schiavone. No one needs to watch 0 Hour. This is the second show in a row where a match from 0 Hour has bled into the main show. I don't know why AEW has decided to do this, but it is just an awful idea. They've done this twice, and both times it has failed. No more. Our actual opening match was Pac versus Darby Allin. Darby Allin has been feuding with the Death Riders for months now, and the build to this match was during Blood and Guts. Pac military press slammed Darby Allin off the entrance stage through 2 flaming tables. That was a great spot in a match that was completely unnecessary because the Death Riders are the worst thing in professional wrestling right now, and the worst thing in professional wrestling for all of 2025. Pac's entrance was great. The red lighting and him sitting on a chair in the crowd, I thought his entrance was very good. This was a very good match. This was one of the best matches of the night in my opinion. Allin hit a springboard crossbody. Pac military press slammed Allin off the apron on the floor. Allin made it back into the ring by the 8 count. Pac slingshotted Allin on the second rope. Pac hit a missile dropkick for 2. Darby Allin hit a suicide dive forearm. Allin then set up Pac on a chair on the outside, and he hit a missile dropkick off the top rope on Pac. That was a great spot. Pac countered a coffin drop into a German suplex, then delivered a running clothesline for 2. Great sequence. Pac locked in the brutalizer, but Darby Allin was able to make it to the ropes. Allin avoided the Black Arrow. He locked in a sharpshooter. Wheeler Yuta caused a distraction, and the closing sequence, Pac hit Darby Allin with a baseball bat for the win. Pac defeats Darby Allin in what was a very good match, one of the best matches of the night. After this match, both guys were announced as competitors in the Continental Classic. However, Darby Allin was legitimately injured, and I'm assuming Darby was going to get his win back in the tournament, leading to a third match at World's End. However, that is not happening. All that being said, this was a very good opening match. Up next, we had a 4-way women's tag team match. This was Marina Shafir and Megan Bayne versus Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa versus Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron versus Sky Blue and Julia Hart. All 4 teams in this match are in the semifinals of the tournament to crown the inaugural women's tag team champions in AEW, as well as the fallout from the Blood and Guts match that led into this match. This is just a combination of the fallout from the women's tag team championship tournament and Blood and Guts. The existence of this match has to be one of the dumbest things Tony Khan has done all year. The stipulation behind this match was the winner would get to choose the stipulation for their semi-final match in this tournament. Why have just one match in this tournament be a stipulation match? And if you wanted to have a stipulation match, why not have it be the final? Why have a semi-final match be a stipulation match? That does not make any sense. The AEW Women's Tag Team Championships were already a bad idea because of how poorly the tag team division and the trios division have been presented over the last year. Here is what should have happened. The 2 semi-final matches should have taken place on Full Gear, and it should have been in a beat the clock stipulation. Whoever beat their opponent in the fastest time gets to choose the stipulation for the finals. In the lead up to Full Gear, Tony Khan announced that they would be crowning an AEW National Champion, a brand new singles championship for AEW, adding to the problem of AEW having too many belts. Having more championships devalues the existing championships. Tony Khan has serious issues when it comes to championship belts. Having more of them doesn't mean anything. It just devalues the ones that are already there. Also, the finals of the Women's Tag Team Championship tournament was the opening match of Winter is Coming. It wasn't even given the main event. Why would we be expected to take these championships seriously when they are not presented as serious championships? Why wouldn't you have that main event Winter is Coming? Why not have the semifinals take place on Full Gear? None of this makes any sense. Before getting into this match, one thing needs to be said. Marina Shafir's theme song is awful. It is horrendous. One of the worst theme songs in AEW. There was a brawl to start the match. Sky Blue hit a twisting neck breaker on Mina for a 2 count. Megan Bayne hit an F5 and then Marina Shafir locked in a submission. Toni Storm got the tag, which caused the crowd to wake up because they were pretty silent for the majority of this match. And then the match breaks down, everyone hits their big moves, and Toni Storm rolled up Harley Cameron for the win. Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa got to choose the stipulation for their semifinals match, which was of course a variation of a no disqualification match. I am positive Tony Khan sees the criticism of there being too many no DQ matches, too many death matches. He sees all the criticism and he just does not care. This match, I mean, it just existed. This occupied some time on the show. This match had a lot of issues, but none of it has to do with the in-ring work. It all has to do with the story. Brodito versus FTR for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. Brodito, I was never sold on these guys as a tag team, and the tag team division, it's the weakest it's been in AEW. Brodito in-ring, they're solid, but the tag team division is just the weakest it's ever been. Bandito and Cash start the match. Brody hit a running senton on Dax for 2. Brody got the hot tag. He hit a Bossman Slam, running senton, Death Valley Driver, and Cannonball. Dax hit a superplex on Brody. Bandito hit a frog splash on Dax. Brody hit a botched suicide dive on Stokely. Cash hit a tornado DDT on Brody. Shatter Machine on Bandito. Brody broke it up at 2. Cash hit Bandito with the belt, got a 2 count. Brodito hit the Shatter Machine on Dax. They got a 2 count. Cash hit a suicide dive on Brody. FTR hit a Doomsday Device on Bandito. They got a 2 count. FTR then hit a Spike Pile Driver on the apron on Brody King. Followed that up with a Spike Pile Driver on Bandito. They got a 2 count. And closing sequence, FTR hit the Shatter Machine on Bandito for the win. FTR are 3-time AEW Tag Team Champions. Brodito's reign ends at 90 days. I thought this was a pretty good match. Even though I was never sold on Brodito, they produced some solid matches. FTR, one of the best tag teams in the world. But again, they're the champions of the AEW Tag Team division, which is the weakest it's ever been. Unless Adam Copeland and Christian Cage make the returns to AEW, there is no real story for these guys as the tag team champions. That being said, I thought this was a pretty good match. In what has to be arguably the biggest waste in AEW history, Casino Gauntlet match to crown the inaugural AEW National Champion. Following Wrestle Dream, AEW announced that they would be crowning an AEW National Champion, a brand new singles championship for the men in AEW. The concept of this championship, I'm not even kidding. The way this championship was advertised was the exact same concept behind the All Atlantic Championship in 2022. And they mentioned this is a championship that's going to be defended around the world on Ring of Honor in New Japan. But isn't that every AEW championship? That's basically the concept of the AEW International Championship. This championship being introduced has to be one of the worst creative decisions in AEW company history. It is one of the dumbest decisions that's been made in professional wrestling in 2025. AEW has a belt problem. There are too many championships in AEW, and adding more championships does not solve anything. I have no idea who thought this was a good idea. Whoever it was, TK, should step away from creative immediately. This championship means nothing. It is legitimately worthless. The design, the worst belt design in AEW right now. This championship belt design is too simplistic. There is nothing about it that stands out. This championship is dead on arrival. It is a dead championship. Also, the winner was super predictable because it was either going to be Shelton Benjamin, Bobby Lashley, or Ricochet. One of these 3 guys were winning the national championship. This is an unnecessary championship. It's the worst design in AEW right now for a championship belt, and everything about this just took away from the match. How anyone thought another championship was a good idea is just baffling to me. The participants of this match were Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, Ricochet, Claudio Castagnoli, Daniel Garcia, Orange Cassidy, Wheeler Yuta, Kevin Knight, Roderick Strong, Mark Davis, Mike Bailey, and Matt Menard. The Demand took out the Hurt Syndicate early on. Claudio countered a suicide dive attempt into an uppercut. The Death Riders attacked Orange Cassidy. Ricochet tried to form an alliance with the Death Riders, but they attacked him. Kevin Knight hit a great jumping clothesline on Wheeler Yuta. Strong caught a springboard clothesline into a backbreaker. Mark Davis hit 3 pile drivers. Matt Menard immediately went after Daniel Garcia because of the story there. He didn't even care about the AEW National Championship. Matt Menard chases Daniel Garcia into the crowd. The Hurt Syndicate took out everyone. They start attacking Ricochet. Wheeler Yuta hits a Busaiko knee on Orange Cassidy. Kevin Knight hits a UFO splash on Wheeler Yuta, and Ricochet hits the Spirit Gun on Kevin Knight for the win. Ricochet is the first ever AEW National Champion. The only reason this was done was to add a little more momentum to the Demand Hurt Syndicate feud, which is still ongoing for some reason. Ricochet is going to be losing this championship to either Bobby Lashley or Shelton Benjamin. The Demand Hurt Syndicate feud is supposed to be over, but it's being extended, and they thought, oh, we'll just add a championship to the feud to make it more important. The AEW National Championship was dead on arrival. The unification match at All In between Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada, looking back at it, was a mistake. It should have just been a winner-takes-all match. Why they brought in the unified championship while the international and the continental championships are still active, that entire thought process, I, to this day, will not understand it. This match existed. This occupied some time on the show. It wasn't bad, wasn't good either. But again, all the in-ring work in this match is overshadowed by the logic gaps regarding the AEW National Championship. I feel like Tony Khan, he keeps outdoing himself with horrible creative in 2025. The AEW National Championship is worthless. It has less than 0 value. Jon Moxley versus Kyle O'Reilly in a no-holds-barred match, because of course this had to be a no disqualification match of some kind. The story coming into this match was blood and guts. Jon Moxley tapped out to Kyle O'Reilly at blood and guts. I've mentioned this in my review of Wrestle Dream. No disqualification matches and all variations of no disqualification matches as far as AEW is concerned mean nothing. AEW have run no DQ matches into the ground. All variations of no disqualification matches mean nothing. They legitimately mean nothing. Kyle O'Reilly is a very good professional wrestler. However, he's not a guy I look at as a mega star. Kyle O'Reilly was great as part of Undisputed Era. Kyle O'Reilly's singles run in NXT from late 2020 into 2021, I was not a fan of that singles run. So I am not sold on Kyle O'Reilly as a singles wrestler. Jon Moxley, I am completely over Jon Moxley in AEW. I think he needs to take 6 months to a year off of television. Whenever Jon Moxley appears on screen, it is instant change the channel garbage. Jon Moxley has legitimately been involved in the worst storyline of 2025 for professional wrestling, and possibly the worst storyline in professional wrestling of the last 5 years with the Death Riders. I will give AEW credit for this no-holds-barred match, in that they tried to differentiate it from their other no-DQ plunder matches where you'd see every weapon in existence being used. Here, the use of weapons was very limited. They used a fork, a chair, and a chain. This was primarily a wrestling match. This is too little too late. The storyline is dead. No one cares. I do not care. Even at Blood and Guts, I did not care. Kyle O'Reilly immediately attacked Moxley. He out-wrestled Moxley during the early stages of the match. Moxley started attacking Kyle with a fork. Kyle O'Reilly was bleeding because, of course, he had to bleed. Moxley then took control, and at this point, I was checked out because I do not care about anything Jon Moxley does. Kyle hit a running dropkick off the apron. Moxley was bleeding because, of course, Jon Moxley has to bleed. I think it might actually be one of the stipulations in his contract. Kyle started attacking Moxley with the fork. Kyle brought a chain into the ring. He hit a suplex. Moxley hit a stomp on the chain. He followed that up with a stomp on the left arm on a chair. Moxley hit a Death Rider and locked in an arm submission. Kyle then locked in an ankle lock, and he used the chain as an assist, and Jon Moxley tapped out to the ankle lock. Kyle O'Reilly has made Jon Moxley tap out twice. After the match, Moxley attacked Kyle, the conglomeration and the Death Riders come out, and there's a stare down, and that was it. I did not care for this match. The story was awful. Kyle O'Reilly isn't someone I look at as a megastar. Jon Moxley, he needs to get off of TV and stay off of TV for the next 6 months to 1 year. I did not care, and because I did not care, I found this match to be uninteresting. AEW should move away from stipulation matches. This is, again, another gimmick that has been run into the ground by Tony Khan. No disqualification, I quit, no holds barred, last man standing. These stipulations are impactful when the story calls for it. You shouldn't use stipulations because you told no story and are relying on the stipulation to keep the engagement of your audience and keep them interested. This is lazy booking, and lazy booking is bad booking. Kyle Fletcher versus Mark Briscoe for the TNT Championship. This was a no disqualification match, and there was an added stipulation where if Briscoe lost, he would have to join the Don Callis family. This was the 6th match between Fletcher and Briscoe, and to me this was easily the best match of the night, with the most engaging story of the night. Briscoe attacked Kyle with a chair, Fletcher caught an apron elbow and he hit a brainbuster on a chair. Briscoe went for a cannonball dive, Fletcher moved out of the way and Briscoe ended up going through a ladder. Kyle threw a ladder at Mark Briscoe and he was bleeding. Kyle then body slammed Mark Briscoe on the ladder. Briscoe hit a missile dropkick. Briscoe dropped the ladder on Fletcher's head. Kyle Fletcher was bleeding at this point. Kyle pushed Briscoe off the top through a table. Fletcher hit a running kick. Fletcher then put Mark through a table. Fletcher hit a great sit-out powerbomb for 2. Mark Briscoe hit a fisherman buster on a pile of thumbtacks. Kyle hit an enziguri and a super kick. Mark Briscoe hit a blockbuster off the apron onto 6 chairs. Mark Briscoe hit the froggy bow off a ladder on Fletcher through a table. Don Callis hands Kyle Fletcher the screwdriver. Kyle hits a low blow and starts attacking Mark Briscoe with the screwdriver. Briscoe then hits a low blow and a brainbuster on the thumbtacks for 2. Kyle Fletcher then hit a brainbuster on the thumbtacks for 2. He went for it again, but Briscoe got out of the brainbuster and hit Razor's Edge through a table. And the closing sequence, Mark Briscoe hit the J-Driller for the win. Mark Briscoe wins the TNT Championship, his first singles championship in AEW. You deserve it, Chance, and Mark Briscoe more than earned this moment. This was excellent. To me, this was easily the best match of the night, and I was invested in the chase. Kyle Fletcher's TNT Championship reign ends at 114 days. To me, this was easily the best match of the night. And Mark Briscoe, like I mentioned, he more than earned this moment. Mark Briscoe actually was in the main event of the first live wrestling show I had ever attended, and this was just a great moment to see him finally become the TNT champion. This was great in my opinion. Easily the best match of the night. Jurassic Express and Kenny Omega versus the Young Bucks and Josh Alexander for $1 million of Tony Khan's imaginary money. I am completely over these big money matches. This is again something that AEW has run into the ground in 2025. No one cares about matches for Tony Khan's imaginary money. This was the second big money match on Full Gear. There was one on the pre-show, and I did some research. AEW has done 15 big money matches in 2025. That is insane. The laziness of this booking is unbelievable. To give matches the illusion of importance, you're putting imaginary money on the line. TK, your imaginary money isn't going to magically make us care about this match. 15 matches for a grand total of over $4.7 million, and not a single one of these big money matches has meant anything. Why Kenny Omega and Jack Perry are teaming together makes no sense. Are we supposed to forget the episode of AEW Dynamite from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, from the spring of 2024, where Kenny Omega was taken out by the Elite? Lazy storytelling. Jack Perry and Nick Jackson started off this match, and honestly, the tag team match between Jurassic Express and the Young Bucks from Wrestle Dream was a lot better than this. I was not very impressed with this match. Omega hit the Terminator dive. He was selling the knee. Nick Jackson missed a dive. Luchasaurus was out of position. Luchasaurus hit 2 choke slams and 1 inverted choke slam. The Bucks hit a double leg sweep and a clothesline on Luchasaurus. Everyone hits their big moves. Kenny Omega hit 3 Snapdragon suplexes. Josh hit a chop block on Omega, locked in the ankle lock. Josh Alexander was bleeding. The Bucks hit the BTE trigger. Tornado DDT on Luchasaurus on the outside. Kenny Omega made it to the ropes. Kenny and Jurassic hit the TK driver. Another series of moves. Jurassic Express hit Countdown to Extinction. Josh Alexander broke it up at 2. The Young Bucks avoided a Doomsday Device, hit double super kicks. Kenny Omega hit the One-Winged Angel on Josh on the outside. And the closing sequence, the Young Bucks hit the BTE trigger for the win. The Bucks and Josh Alexander win $1 million. Like I mentioned, the tag team match at Wrestle Dream was better in my opinion. After the match, the rest of the Don Callis family came out. Don Callis welcomed the Young Bucks into the Don Callis family. The family attacks Kenny Omega. The Young Bucks look conflicted. They're arguing with Don Callis on the stage. You sold out chants. And then the Young Bucks, they drop the money. They run to the ring, save Kenny Omega from the Don Callis family. They shake the hands of Jurassic Express and the Elite are reunited. This is the exact same story that they've been telling with the Elite since AEW began. They're together as a unit. There's a falling out. They get back together, falling out, back together. It is the same story over and over and over again with the Elite. I am completely over Kenny Omega feuding with Don Callis. This feud needs to end and never be revisited. I am completely over Kenny Omega versus Don Callis. Both guys need to move on to something else. The Young Bucks are now faces teaming with Kenny Omega. I will say this, the Trios division desperately needs more teams. So if these guys are going to be put back in the Trios division, that is a good thing for the Trios division. Kenny Omega teaming with Jurassic Express made no sense. I was not a fan of this match. And again, these big money matches are lazy and uncreative. No more. We do not need any more of these big money matches. They don't make matches important. Our semi-main event, Chris Statlander versus Mercedes Moné for the AEW Women's World Championship. Ultimo Moné now has 13 championship belts. Chris Statlander, her entrance for this match was great. She came out of a spaceship. I thought that was pretty cool. This is a rematch from Full Gear last year, where Mercedes defended the TBS Championship against Chris. I am not a fan of the way Mercedes Moné has been booked in AEW. This Ultimo Moné belt collector storyline, I was not a fan of it. Chris Statlander. I'm a fan of Chris Statlander, and I was happy that she won the AEW Women's World Championship at All Out. Didn't make a lot of sense, but I was happy that she won the championship finally after being there for over 5 years. She more than deserved the AEW Women's World Championship. And my biggest fear going into Full Gear was that she was going to lose the championship to Mercedes. There was an immediate brawl to start the match. Mercedes locked in the Statement Maker. Chris rolled up Mercedes for 2. Chris hit a standing moonsault for 2. Mercedes hit a baseball slide. Chris caught a suicide dive. Chris hit a top rope suplex. She missed the 450. Moné hit a Meteora off the apron, threw Chris into the steps, and hit another Meteora. Moné hit a Tornado DDT, locked in an armbar. Moné then hit a Meteora on the arm, got a 2 count. She then locked in a cross arm breaker, and then hit a Tornado DDT for 2. Mercedes then hit 14 Amigos, 1 for each championship that she had, and 1 for the Women's World Championship. Also, a nice tribute to Eddie Guerrero. Chris countered the frog splash with a kick to the jaw. Chris hit a running knee strike. Chris Statlander then hit what I can only describe as a fisherman Michinoku driver. Mercedes hit a knee drop on the arm on the apron. Meteora countered into the Blue Thunder Bomb on the outside. That was an incredible spot. Chris made it back into the ring at the count of 3. Mercedes made it back into the ring at the count of 9. Of course, Tony Khan had to have the 9 count spot somewhere on the show. Mercedes hit a codebreaker, backstabber, and sunset flip powerbomb. Chris hit a discus lariat for 2. Chris Statlander then locked in the Statement Maker. Then Mercedes Moné locked in the Statement Maker. Moné used the seatbelt pin, got a 2 count. Chris then used the seatbelt pin, got a 2 count. Chris hit a package pile driver. She got a 2 count. Mercedes got the ropes. Chris caught a Meteora. Moné turned it into a Poison Rana and hit a Meteora for 2. Series of counters and the closing sequence. Chris Statlander hits a tombstone for the win and defeats Mercedes Moné in the most shocking outcome of the night. I did not see this coming. I thought for sure Mercedes Moné would beat Chris Statlander and become the new Women's World Champion at Full Gear, but she lost. I couldn't believe it. Chris Statlander retained the Women's World Championship at Full Gear. I couldn't believe it. This was a very good match. To me, this was the second best match of the night. This was a very good match. And the story coming out of this match seems to be Mercedes losing the championship belts one by one. I do know that she lost the Ring of Honor Women's World Television Championship to Red Velvet. So it looks like the story they're telling here is Mercedes one by one losing these championships until there's nothing left. And then that's when she finally becomes the Women's World Champion. I think that's the story they're telling here. That being said, this was a very good match. Second best match of the night in my opinion. There was a backstage segment involving the Don Callis family. Okada blamed Takeshita for Kyle Fletcher losing the TNT Championship. Callis seemed to be siding with Okada, and then he announced that all three of these guys are going to be participants in the Continental Classic. Again, telling the story of Konosuke Takeshita getting kicked out of the Don Callis family. And it is pretty obvious that the finals of the Continental Classic is going to be Okada versus Takeshita. I could see Kyle Fletcher in one of the semi-final matches. It's pretty clear that the finals is going to be Okada versus Takeshita. Our main event, Hangman Adam Page versus Samoa Joe in a steel cage match for the AEW World Championship. The storyline was terrible. The heel turn at Wrestle Dream was forced and didn't make any sense. Samoa Joe won a four-way match to become the #1 contender for the AEW World Championship. This was the third steel cage match that AEW had produced in the span of 2 weeks because they had Blood and Guts 10 days prior to Full Gear. The crowd was chanting for Samoa Joe because Samoa Joe is a legend and he is awesome, and we do not want to boo Samoa Joe. Once again, Samoa Joe came out without his Trios Championship belt, again showing that those championships are worthless. Hangman Adam Page had a custom theme song. I thought this was a fine match. Their match at Wrestle Dream was definitely a lot better than this. Joe was thrown into the cage, Samoa Joe was bleeding pretty early on, and at this point, with the amount of blood and no DQ matches that were seen earlier on this show, this really wasn't as impactful as they were hoping it to be. Blood should be used sparingly. The more you use it, the more people become desensitized to it. Page hit a moonsault. Joe threw Page into the cage. Joe hit a forearm and enziguri. Adam Page was bleeding at this point, but again, it had no impact. Joe hit a powerbomb for 2. Page locked in the Kokina clutch. Joe hit a Uranagi. Page hit a sunset flip powerbomb off the second rope. Katsuyori Shibata came out. He grabbed the world championship and started climbing the cage. Eddie Kingston came out to stop him for some reason. They start brawling. I have no idea what Eddie Kingston has to do with the ops, but is what it is. Ref bump. Page hits the Deadeye. Powerhouse Hobbs breaks the chain with his hands and enters the cage. Page hits a low blow on Hobbs and throws him into the cage. Joe locked in the Kokina clutch. Page hits a buckshot lariat. Hook comes out. He wakes up the ref. He grabs the championship belt, hits Hangman, removes the jacket, and it is shown that he's wearing an Ops t-shirt. Samoa Joe hits a muscle buster on the championship belt for the win. Samoa Joe is a 2-time AEW World Champion. Hangman Adam Page, his second World Championship reign ends at 133 days. And this reign was awful. There's no other word to describe it. This reign was terrible. Hangman winning the World Championship at All In was the right decision because it ended the Death Rider storyline. We had a lot of hope coming out of All In for how this championship reign would be presented. And this reign was arguably the second worst World Championship reign in AEW history, just behind the reign that preceded it with Jon Moxley. Tony Khan, in my opinion, had no idea how to book Hangman Adam Page as the world champion following All In. I am 100% convinced that the I Quit match we got at Wrestle Dream was supposed to be the match we were supposed to get at All In. I believe that Darby Allin was supposed to win the Owen Hart Foundation tournament and challenge Jon Moxley at All In, but because he was climbing Mount Everest, that obviously couldn't happen, so they were left with either Hangman or Ospreay. Tony Khan and the AEW creative team failed Hangman Adam Page. This second World Championship reign will go down as the second worst World Championship reign in AEW company history and one of the worst championship reigns in AEW history. This second World Championship reign was awful. The story with MJF made no sense and made a complete embarrassment out of the Casino Gauntlet. The match with Kyle Fletcher made no sense, and the only thing that people are gonna remember from that match is that it went close to 40 minutes for no reason. And from Wrestle Dream, the nonsensical heel turn. There is nothing positive to be taken away from Hangman Adam Page's second World Championship reign. This reign was awful. Samoa Joe is a two-time AEW World Champion. He deserves it. Samoa Joe is great. And I wanted him to have a second World Championship reign because that first reign, it did feel like he was more or less a placeholder champion. But I'm glad that he's a two-time World Champion. I'm a big fan of Samoa Joe. I think he's great. After the match, the Ops are celebrating. The lights go out. A video of a house burning hits the Titantron. Prince Nana and Swerve Strickland make their return for the first time since Forbidden Door. Swerve has a new theme song. I'm not a fan of it. The Ops clear a path for him because they think he's here to attack Hangman. But then Swerve starts attacking the Ops. He takes out the Ops dojo. He sides with Hangman Adam Page. Page and Swerve stare down the Ops, and that was Full Gear 2025. Also, this was the shortest main event in AEW company history. The match at Wrestle Dream was a lot better than this. Overall, I would say that this is definitely the worst edition of Full Gear that AEW has produced. This is the weakest edition of Full Gear by far. There were a couple of really good matches on this show. Pac versus Allen, Fletcher versus Briscoe, Statlander versus Monet. There were good matches on this show, but overall, this was easily the worst edition of Full Gear that AEW has produced. And that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. You can follow me on Instagram at Said_2000, and I will see you on the next video. Till then, take care.